Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Mission Employable podcast. My name is Ben Oldak. With here, my co-host Kathy Leggett, back from her staycation.
Yes,
so
a great staycation.
She was out last week, but now she's back on, which is great. I apologize. I did call you a slacker.
Yeah, you did. And I told him he was going to get you. You were going to get him for it.
But no, she's
All
not a
right,
slacker. She works very hard here. But our guest is obviously a familiar one. If you listened last episode, Dr. James Williams is back in the studio. He's the director of IVRS, and we split him up into a two-part series because he's got a lot to talk about, frankly. And the previous episode, if you didn't hear it, we did a year review for IVRS because it is his 1-year anniversary here.
Yay.
Today. He's been with us for a year. He hasn't gotten sick of us or Iowa, which is great.
Oh, thank goodness.
And we just talked about what IVRS has kind of accomplished in that year that he's been here and at the helm. And there's a lot of really great things. You should go and check it out, listen to it. And especially what we've been able to accomplish now that IVRS has merged with IWD and has come under our umbrella. So I encourage you guys to go back and listen to that one if you haven't. But today we are going to be talking about what the next year has in store for us. And so James, welcome in again. And we're really excited to hear what the future for IVRS is going to look like.
Sure. So I've got a couple of things I'll share this morning. First, I want to start with a really exciting opportunity we have. It just started, so I would say the next year is kind of the year to really see how it works. But a partnership we've created with the Business Engagement Division and the VR Division here at IWD. And what that partnership consists of is using our funds, we're paying for 2 staff members who are actually embedded within the Business Engagement Division to conduct business engagement and outreach on behalf of VR, but as a part of the Business Engagement Division. And that may not sound like that big of a deal, but the reason it's a huge deal is what we're trying to do is to further integrate our business engagement processes and working with businesses across the agency versus just having it housed solo under VR. For years and years, that's kind of how things have been done. Is VR's had our staff doing business work, IWD's had their staff doing business work. Well, the problem with that is first of all, employers get confused because they don't know who they're talking to or why they're talking to one versus the other. 2, we have different contacts and we weren't sharing them. So we had businesses that we were working with that IWD didn't, and vice versa. They had the same. And so our goal is now is one door, one team, and a single point of contact, and that's our Business Engagement Division. So they're the front door. They're where businesses come through. From there, those business engagement consultants and the BE division and their team is able to pass contacts and relationships with businesses to us and vice versa. As we get them, we're able to pass them forward. And I think this is going to be tremendous for everybody. It's going to lead to more business engagement across IWD for all of the Iowans that we serve, but it's also going to lead to many more connections for the people with disabilities that we serve in VR because we're not siloed anymore. And I think it's one of the best examples of how we're trying to take advantage of what alignment brings us in a really positive and meaningful way. The next week, that partnership has been in place for I think we're on about 3 months now. So still very new, very fresh, not a lot of data yet. Although I say that, we have already gotten several success stories of individuals with disabilities that were placed because of that team. So I shouldn't say we don't have data. We have data. In the next year or so, we'll have even more data in terms of just numbers and outlook. But pretty remarkable, and that's one big thing.
Yeah, and I love that because it's a proactive approach into hiring folks with disabilities. We talked a little bit about that last week.
Exactly.
Where, sometimes IVRS in the past may have been a little reactive where it's like, hey, we've got this person coming to us, they need a job, let's help them find a job.
Exactly.
Versus kind of creating a business environment throughout the state where people are encouraged to think of hiring folks with disabilities like off the jump.
Exactly.
And using our business engagement team to kind of foster that environment.
Right. It's just like growing. I mean, I think it's just like expanding for employers, expanding their ability to draw from a really great pool of employees. Exactly. But they're proactively ready,
Exactly.
Yeah. So.
Well, and it also encourages too, here's what's interesting as well. We were doing a lot of kind of one-off outreach, but one of the things we can do now is using what are called SOC codes, which are basically just job codes to talk about a specific occupation. The my VR team is able to pass those to the business engagement team, so they're actually making contacts with employers that match the needs and the outlook of the people that we're serving.
Yes.
So it's much more intentional now, and I think that's a big change to it. It's not just, hey, we're going to go talk. I'm going to pick on a big company, Principal. They're a great company, right? But we're not going to go just talk to Principal because they're Principal and we want to work with them. We're going to go talk to them because we have job candidates in VR that are looking for jobs that they have.
Yes.
And so it's a much more intentional approach, and I think it's going to frankly be transformative for even VR in Iowa, because up to this point, it's been, like you said, been very reactive, very much like, well, we don't have a relationship, we'll find one. Does anybody know anybody? It was very like we kind of scrambled to figure it out. And now it can be, well, actually, we already have that relationship, or we don't, but you know what? We've passed those codes forward to the BE team. They're looking through their Rolodexes, virtually speaking, and they're going to find their contacts, or they're going to go make one.
Right.
And so it's, again, much more needs driven, much more intentional, much less reactive. So yeah, I'm super excited, and I think what's exciting about it too is we're really the only state in the country that has this type of relationship. So I've actually gotten calls and had meetings with many different VR stakeholders across the country. Michigan, several different states have asked and said, hey, let us know how this goes, because we're looking at something similar for how we can kind of get out of those silos and synergize with each other. So we're really leading the way here.
That's awesome. So good.
What else you got coming up?
So another really exciting thing, and again, doesn't seem like a big deal, but it is. For a long time in Iowa and for a lot of states, there was a requirement that you had to have a master's degree to be a rehabilitation counselor. Well, in the last decade or so, before I got here, of course, the federal government said, hey, no, we're going to relax that, and we're going to require a bachelor's, but you have to have some experience. Well, even though the federal government relaxed their standards, we at VR and DAS, in terms of the position, did not, which for good reason in some cases, to be honest, because we want highly qualified, right? So it makes sense. However, what we were having after the pandemic is our rehab counseling programs are just much smaller than they used to be. And as many of us know, the labor market, particularly in Iowa, is just ridiculously tight.
Right.
And because of that, we're holding to a standard that actually was causing us in some areas not to get qualified applicants because we just weren't getting enough people. So what we did is we worked with our federal partners, we work with DAS, and we've been working through how can we preserve the quality, but open the pool.
Yeah.
So actually, as of now, it's been published. You can apply to a VR counselor role in Iowa now with the bachelor's degree. Now you have to have relevant experience, of course. And what we've done is, instead of requiring it, we've opened up the pool, but then we are setting a cap in terms of salary. So, for example, you could become a counselor, but if you wanted to get to the upper part of that range for that position, that's your incentive to go back to school to get the master's. So we want to preserve that incentive. That's really important for us because we want people with masters. Don't get me wrong. We always do. That's always our preference. But we're allowing young professionals to come in and give VR counseling a shot. The other exciting part is it's going to allow people from other disciplines that are maybe on their second or third career that couldn't consider VR because they said, I'm not going to go back and get a master's. I've got kids. I got a family. I don't have time for that. I don't have the money for that. Well, now they can consider this career, and we can train them and give them the chance to move through it. So really exciting. That change just happened. We haven't even made our first hire under that new change. So I couldn't tell you how it's going to work. I don't know yet. But that's another way that we're trying to be innovative and recognizing the talent and labor pool we have and making sure we have staff to meet the needs of our Iowans.
I think that's a great example. Not only I love that you guys have done that, but I think for others, that's a great example for them to think about too, because you're right. You have to look at the labor pool available, and
you have to be flexible.
And we always want quality is always what we want. That's the thing. But there are different ways to maybe get it.
Yes.
And so I think that's very exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, it also kind of plays into a lot of the things that we're hearing from other employers across the state, and something that we kind of preach here too, which is like, obviously you need the right kind of experience and you need the right kind of education and that kind of stuff, but like there's room to train people in how we want to have them work and the skills that they want. And we hear it from employers all the time, like it's more important that we find somebody who is hardworking, that comes to work on time, that is dedicated to their job, and then we can teach them the rest. I mean, we talk about that with our apprenticeship programs, with work-based learning, all that kind of stuff. And obviously with a specialized role like this, having a bachelor's is important, and having some relevant career work is important, so that that you have that like foundational base.
Absolutely.
But being able to rely on other folks that have worked here for a long time and be able to teach them the finer points of those kinds of things, shouldn't disqualify somebody from being a candidate.
Absolutely. Well, and especially if they've got that relevant experience. I mean,
Yes.
we see a lot of people, and I'll give you a great example that we see this a lot. You would think somebody coming in with like a business degree, you would think, well, how could they do VR counseling? How could they, what's so interesting is that's a great example of people that actually have tremendous transferable skills that
Yes.
actually are really valuable to somebody in VR.
Yeah.
So we tell people that's an example of a degree where we want people like that,
Yes.
because what we can do is they can take that knowledge they already have. A, they can teach us,
Yeah.
but B, we can teach them the counseling skills. We
Yes.
can teach them the rehabilitative process. We have training to do that, very comprehensive training. But they're bringing a piece that a lot of our other counselors that have come maybe out of education like
Right.
myself that we don't have.
Right.
And we don't speak that business language, and they can. So you're right. Like there's so much value to really diversifying our pool. And I'm
Yeah.
excited to see, I think a year from now, not only is it going to help us meet our hiring needs, but I think it's also going to make sure that we're getting not necessarily the traditional applicant, we're getting the best one. And we're getting somebody
Yes.
that we can grow and train and move up.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, that's very exciting. Okay. What else do you got for us?
Okay, well, so I thought about one thing about our registered apprenticeship for direct service professionals, but it's super exciting. It's basically trying to address another challenge we have in our job market, which is direct service professionals
Yes.
and just not having enough of them. And so as part of our DIF grant, Ashley and her team have been working with Dane to create an opportunity to get actually the people we serve, people with disabilities that have a desire to serve, to actually be DSPs.
Wonderful.
And go through it in apprenticeship. So I'll let Ashley give you the
Okay,
full story,
good.
but it's super
Yes.
it's super exciting.
And
Okay.
real
Yeah.
quick, could you clarify what that is, like a direct service professional?
Sure. So that's somebody who works with people with disabilities in some type of either a public or private setting. So they may be working in a group home, they may be doing job coaching and supported employment services. Basically somebody who's working with someone with a disability, providing a service, and it can be almost anything you could imagine, and some that you probably can't. Everything. I mean, I tell people some DSPs literally drive. They are they drive people,
Yes.
and that's what they do. But yeah, that's the role.
Awesome.
And I got to imagine that that's something that folks with disabilities can look at as a sense of inspiration.
Absolutely.
You have, if you're getting services from somebody who's employed and has a disability, and you look at them as like a peer, I feel like that can encourage you to say that this is possible.
Yes.
I can
Absolutely.
do this.
Absolutely. Well, and it's also a job that's ripe for apprenticeship because it's an on-the-job training kind of a job. It's not, I tell people, you don't go to school to be a direct service professional. You shadow and work with other direct service professionals and apprentice
Yes.
to learn it, and then that's what makes you the best. And
Yes.
I did that work. That was way back. Like one of my first jobs actually out of college was I was doing DSP work, and mine was more focused on the employment side of DSP work, but I did some other things like independent living and things like that. But it was something that I learned from somebody, and I remember her name. I think her name was Nancy, I believe, and she had been there maybe 20 years, and she taught me the job. Like she was very much. I didn't call myself an apprentice. She didn't call me an apprentice, but
Right.
that's what it was. Like I did it. I did that
Yes.
informally. So no, I think it's a great opportunity. It allows people to give back and serve. It allows us to address a workforce crisis, and because
Absolutely.
we're utilizing it as part of our DIF grant, we have money and funding and support behind it to actually make sure we prop it up correctly and do it right.
Awesome.
And on top of that, that's like another example of how the realignment has allowed you to do something, because you're working with IWD's apprenticeship team.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And now you're having, IVRS working with that division of IWD. And
Absolutely.
it's like I don't know, there's several examples of ways that the realignment and you guys coming under our umbrella has opened doors for you.
Absolutely. And if I can give one last example, I think that's
Please.
probably the best if we have the time.
Yeah, we
Because
have
it's a
time.
great example of that, and it talks about tying us together. So I'll back up a little bit. So we applied for reallotment with the federal government, which is where we said, hey, we've spent our federal funds, we would like more, and we have state funds to match them, which is a great thing to have.
Yes.
And it's a problem, but it's a wonderful problem. So we did receive $2.25 million in additional federal reallotment, which is awesome. And one of the ways we want to use that is expanding our staff capacity in some key ways. But the one I want to talk about is the second, which is redesigning our case management system. So anybody served by any VR in any state, there's a system on the VR end that basically helps us track the progress of their plan, develop their plan, do authorizations, basically manage the VR process and keep up with the paperwork because of course, it's a state service, so we have to have paperwork, right?
Yeah, of course.
Yes.
Whether we want it or not,
That's
and
right.
it's federally required, we have to
That's
have
right.
it. So anyways, so that system right now is siloed. It doesn't talk to IowaWORKS or Geo. It doesn't talk to anybody. It literally just exists in the VR world. It is also decades old. It is homegrown, and it is well past its prime. It probably passed its prime 15, 20 years ago. Like it is very, very, very very old in tech world terms. And so we need to replace it. But what we're doing is instead of just replacing it with something off the shelf and saying, okay, we're going to replace it and stick something where it was, we are looking at how can we get a system that can interface either on the front or the back end with IowaWORKS and with Geo to make sure that we actually can send referrals between VR and all of the IWD core partners and the other direction. Yeah. And so that's super important is we're taking advantage of the chance that we're all under one roof. So let's get a case management system that talks to that entire house that we can move across. It's a really important priority to the director. It's a really big priority to me. And I think it alone, one of our biggest barriers right now in cross-referring and co-enrolling is the technology and just the barrier we have between it. And so getting that barrier removed, and not only removed, but actually strengthened and get a communication channel will be transformative. It'll mean more services for Iowans with disabilities, and it'll mean that we serve more people that are coming to IWD that maybe don't know about VR. And that's always been the goal.
Yes.
Because how are you guys kind of communicating with it now? I mean, like carrier pigeon? Like,
it feels like it.
Smoke signals?
It feels like it. No, so in many cases, it's a terrible form, electronic form, which sounds like it would be great. It is not great. It goes to one person, and then it has to be passed to the other person, and they have to manually forward the form. It's a nightmare. And people get dropped. People don't get referral. And like it's a mess. So it's not a great system. And it's funny because the local workforce development boards share our frustration. They don't like it either. In fact, many of them have come to me and said, hey, is this something VR is aware of and working on? And of course we said, absolutely we are, and we agree with you. So currently it's a messy combination of a form and an email. And it just doesn't work, right? Like people leave, people move on. There's too much disconnect. And so it's got to be a system that continues continuity all the time. And it's got to be a system that knows all the partners and can connect to all the partners, right? So one of the challenges we've also had too is we've had to educate our VR staff about all the services IWD provides.
Yes.
A great example I give people is veterans. Veterans could be served by the VA, served by VR, and be served by IWD and veteran services, and they should be.
Yes.
I always tell people, how many people said, you know what, I got too many services. I don't have too many services. I don't want these. No, everybody said always is like, where can I get this? So no one complains about too many services. So we get that out of our mind, and we realize that the more we can deliver to each person, the better off they're going to be. And so that's the goal too, is that we can actually do some effective cross-referring when somebody has, let's say, a particular barrier that is servable across the agency.
Yes.
And veterans are a great example, but also I'm thinking, justice-involved youth, people coming out of corrections. I mean, there's all the, migrants. There's all types of things where their disability very much affects those populations equally so. In fact, in some cases more so.
Yeah.
And so are they connected to VR? And and the answer many times has been no, which of course is shocking because we're running in the same agency now. So that's what we've got to change. And I think the case management system is part of it. Training across services is part of it. We did our annual VR conference. It's coming up again next year. I think, Ben, you were there. Part of that conference every year, the intent is going to be to do cross-training with VR staff across IWD programs. So last year we had Michelle come. We did some training from Jamie and the veterans group. This year we want to do some apprenticeship. We're going to be talking to Dane and ask him to come talk about apprenticeship. So we're trying to also couple that new case management system with really good training and then processes that tie it all together and create a feedback loop and a back and forth between all the different programs when we're making sure people get to where they need to go.
That is awesome. That's ideal. And yes.
Couple years, but we'll get there.
I know, but so much progress in a year. And then, looking forward to everything that's on your plate this next year. I think it's just going to go gangbusters again. And again, just to the benefit of everybody. So
and we've got a great team. I'll tell you, I mean, you've talked to Brandy, you've talked to Ashley, some of our best, but we have many great staff members. And I think, to be honest, when I was here, and this is normal, a part of any realignment, we had people retire, we had people that switched roles, we had people that moved on, that's fine. I think the other nice thing too is in the last year, we not only are fully staffed again, we've got the best people in the best roles. I'm a big believer in you don't just get people to a job, you find them the role that plays to their strengths and you let them loose.
Yes.
You just let them go and you let them just go to town on it. Yeah. And I can tell you people like Ashley, Brandy, Eric, Mary, a lot of my management team, that's what I've done. I've given them, hey, this is what you're great at, this is your background, this is what you love, this is what wakes you up in the morning, go do it and be amazing at it. And they really are amazing. So a little kudos. I think I needed to share this, and I don't know if I did in my last interview, but so happy with my team, and kudos to them. They are making this magic possible. It may be my ideas or my plan, but it's them doing the work. Like they are digging in, they're invested, and they're also getting the rest of our agency excited about the work.
Right, and then I think that also leads to one of the things kind of indirectly talked about, though, the retention. Because when you continue to have turnover, I mean, every employer knows this. It's just hard to make any.
Yes, it's hard to break the cycle.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's very exciting about this too, I think.
Yeah, and we have, and I'm excited, and we're going to keep it there. So,
Well, awesome. What a great wrap up, and a great way to kind of get into National Disability Employment Awareness Month and what all that means. Obviously it's a time to kind of reflect and look back and figure out how you as a business can be more inclusive, how you can be more proactive in hiring, and looking at this job pool that is ready and available to work and make wonderful employees.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And we love to talk about that. We love to see it. And James, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Absolutely. Thank you both.
Yes.